All right, so chess for 4-year-olds. I mean, is that even possible?
Well, that's what we're diving into today, right?
Exactly. This book, How to Teach a 4-Year-Old Chess, is by Marcus Lamar. And honestly, at first I was like, come on, 4-year-olds. But then I thought, well, why not dive in and see what it says?
Yeah, it's interesting. It starts off with kind of the why. Like, why even bother teaching a 4-year-old chess?
Yeah, I mean, there are apps for like teaching kids their ABCs. So why chess?
Well, the book argues that there are all these cognitive benefits, like memory, focus, problem solving, all those things that are helpful for kids that age.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, those are great skills to develop, but how do you get a 4-year-old to actually like sit down and like focus on a chessboard?
Right. So that's where it gets pretty creative. Instead of like, rooks and knights and all that, they give them these fun names.
Like what?
So the knight becomes the brave knight, and the king is the royal king.
Oh, the Royal King. I like that.
Yeah, and it really it personalizes the pieces.
Hmm.
It gives them a story, makes them more relatable for a kid.
Yeah, I bet you could even have a kid, come up with their own names for the pieces too, right?
Absolutely. The more you can personalize it, the better. And the book even talks about like using music and rhymes and like little dances to help the kids remember how each piece moves.
Okay, so how do you actually explain like the movements of each piece to a 4-year-old? Like, let's start with the pawns. How do you make that interesting?
Well, the pawns are actually a good example because, they move one square forward, which is simple, but then they capture diagonally.
Oh, right. So it's like they have a secret weapon or something.
Exactly. It's like a little twist that adds some excitement and strategy to the game, even with the simplest piece.
Yeah.
And then there's pawn promotion.
Pawn promotion. What's that?
Okay, so imagine your 4-year-old's pawn makes it all the way across the board. Suddenly, boom, it can become a queen, a rook, a bishop, or a knight.
Whoa. So a pawn can transform into like a super powerful piece.
Yeah. And that's like such a cool concept for a kid, right? It introduces the idea of long-term goals, not just immediate captures.
Okay, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we've got the pawns and their secret weapon.
Yeah.
But what about the queen? I mean, she can move everywhere, right? How do you explain that to a 4-year-old?
It's all about the wow factor. Like, look at this piece. It can go anywhere. It gets them excited about the queen's power.
But isn't that confusing if you've just learned that all the other pieces can only move in certain ways and then suddenly, boom, the queen can go wherever?
Well, that's why you don't introduce it all at once. You build up to it. It's like saying, hey, once you master the basics, look what you can do.
Okay, I see. So you're kind of building anticipation.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got the pawns, we've got the queen. What about the other pieces, like those knights that can jump over things?
Yeah, the knights. They can be tricky. But the book uses lots of diagrams, to show how those L-shaped jumps work.
Oh, so it's like a visual puzzle almost?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the rooks. They move in straight lines. And then you have castling. Now that's where things can get a little complicated.
Oh, yeah, castling. I still get confused by that one sometimes. How on earth do you explain that to a 4-year-old?
Well, the book breaks it down step by step and uses really clear diagrams. It shows how the king and rook move together, like they're working as a team to create this safe haven.
A safe haven.
Yeah, it's like a little escape plan for the king to keep him out of trouble.
I like that. So you're introducing strategic thinking right from the start.
Right, and the book does a really good job of weaving those strategic elements into those early lessons.
Okay, so we've kind of covered the basics of the pieces and how they move. But how do you actually teach a 4-year-old to, like, play the game strategically? That's
Yeah.
what I'm really curious about. But we'll have to save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
I was thinking about those fun names for the pieces. Do kids actually remember them? Oh, they totally do. It's amazing how much those little things can help. But the really interesting part is the book goes beyond just the names and the movements, and it starts teaching them how to think strategically.
Okay, now that's what I'm curious about. Like, how do you explain strategy to a 4-year-old? I mean, isn't that kind of advanced?
Well, it starts with patterns. The book encourages kids to look for, like, formations on the board, like when pieces are lined up in a certain way.
Oh, I see. So they're starting to see the bigger picture, not just individual moves.
Exactly. And the book has these exercises and puzzles. It's like a spot the difference for chess pieces. They have to find those patterns.
That's a good idea.
Hmm.
But spotting patterns is one thing. How do you get them to actually analyze their opponent's strategy? I mean, isn't that a big jump?
It is a big jump, but the book kind of breaks it down. Like, they'll give simple examples. Okay, if your opponent moves their queen here, it puts your king in danger. So they start to see the cause and effect.
Oh, so it's like teaching them to think from someone else's perspective.
Exactly. And as they get better, the book introduces more complex scenarios. They have to think about, okay, why did my opponent make that move? What are they trying to do?
So they're like little mind
In
readers.
a way, yeah. But the book also makes sure it stays fun. Remember those creative names and movements we talked about? They incorporate that into the strategy lessons too.
So it's not just like memorizing rules and tactics.
No, it's more about making it exciting, making it a story. The book even suggests creating stories around the games, like maybe the pawns are on a quest to rescue the princess.
Oh, I love that. So they're learning strategy without even realizing it.
Exactly. But it's not just about analyzing their opponent. The book also has them think about their own moves. Like, was that a good move? Could I have done something better?
So they're learning from their mistakes.
Right. It's about self-reflection, and constantly trying to improve their game.
I like that. It's teaching them valuable lessons that they can use in other parts of their lives too. But let's be honest, even with the most creative approach, there are going to be days when your 4-year-old just doesn't want to play chess. So what does the book say about that?
Well, it's all about finding ways to, weave chess into their daily routine.
Okay, so not forcing them to sit down for hours at a time?
No, not at all. It could be as simple as a quick chess puzzle after breakfast or before bedtime, or using chess-themed crafts and activities.
Crafts? Like what?
Oh, maybe making a knight out of clay or building a giant chessboard on the floor with colorful tape.
Oh, that's fun. So you're making it part of their playtime.
Exactly. And the book also talks about finding ways to connect with other young chess players, maybe a chess club or family chess night or even community chess events.
Chess clubs for 4-year-olds, that's so cool.
I know, right? It's all about creating a community, a place where they can share their passion for the game with others. But of course, even with all that, it's still important to celebrate their progress and keep them motivated.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Hmm.
Especially when they get frustrated or they lose a game.
Well, the book talks about positive reinforcement, praising their efforts no matter how small, and maybe creating a chess goal chart where they can track their progress and see how far they've come. It's about making them feel good about their accomplishments.
Oh, that's a great idea. I bet kids would love that. But what about when they lose a game and they're feeling discouraged?
Well, then it's about focusing on the process, not the outcome. Helping them understand that learning takes time and that it's okay to make
It's
mistakes.
about learning from those mistakes
Right.
and not giving up.
Exactly. And beyond those external rewards, it's also about nurturing their intrinsic motivation. Helping them discover that joy of the game, the satisfaction of solving a puzzle or coming up with a strategy.
So it's about helping them fall in love with chess, not just focusing on winning or losing.
Right. But now let's actually get into those chess lessons themselves. How does the book actually break down the complexities of the game into something a 4-year-old can understand? I think it's time to explore that in part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about why you'd even want to teach a 4-year-old chess and some of the creative ways to make it fun and engaging.
But now it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty, the actual chess lessons.
Right. Let's see. Chapter 3 is titled Learning the Moves. That seems like a good place to start.
It is, and the book really takes a step-by-step approach, starting with those basic pawn moves.
Which, let's be honest, can seem kind of boring at first, like just one square forward, whoop-dee-doo.
Yeah, but the book does a good job of explaining why pawns are actually so important. They're the foundation of the game.
Okay, so they're like the building blocks.
Exactly. And even though they move forward one square, remember they capture diagonally.
Oh, yeah. That's right. So it's like a little surprise attack.
Exactly. And that adds a layer of strategy right from the start. And then, of course, you have pawn promotion.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that before. That's where the pawn can turn into like a queen or something, right? If it makes it all the way across the board.
Right. And the book really makes that exciting for kids. It's like a power-up.
Okay, so we've got the pawns. What about the king and queen? They seem like the most powerful pieces.
They are. But they move very differently. The king is all about protection, It's the most important piece, but it can only move one square at a time.
So it's like slow and steady.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes the importance of keeping your king safe. It's like a big responsibility.
Okay, that makes sense. And the queen.
Well, the queen is like the opposite. She can move anywhere, any direction, any number of squares.
Wow, so she's like the ultimate weapon.
Pretty much. And the book really plays up that wow factor. It gets kids excited about the possibilities.
So you've got the slow and steady king and the super fast queen. What about the other pieces, like the knights and bishops?
Yeah, those are a bit more tricky. But the book uses lots of visual aids, like diagrams, to help explain those movements.
So for the knight, with its L-shaped move, it's like a visual puzzle.
Exactly. It makes it fun for kids to figure out where the knight can go. And for the bishops, it emphasizes that they can only move diagonally and only on squares of the same color.
Oh, I see. So like one bishop stays on the light squares and the other stays on the dark squares.
Right. It simplifies things.
That makes sense. And what about the rooks?
Rooks are pretty straightforward. They move in straight lines, up, down, or sideways.
Oh, yeah, like a tower.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's that whole castling thing, right? Which I still don't fully understand.
The book does a good job of breaking it down step by step. Basically, the king and one of the rooks move at the same time as a special move to protect the king.
Okay, so it's like a team effort. I like that. But this book really goes beyond just explaining how the pieces move, right?
Oh, yeah, it introduces all sorts of chess terminology like check and checkmate, and even en passant, which is like the super sneaky pawn move.
Wow, en passant. That sounds intense. So how do they make sure a 4-year-old doesn't get overwhelmed by all this stuff?
Well, they introduce the terms gradually and use lots of examples and repetition. So it's not like they're memorizing a glossary of terms. It's more like they learn as they go in the context of the game.
Okay, that makes sense. And then they start learning about strategy, right?
Exactly. The book teaches them about things like controlling the center of the board, developing their pieces effectively, and recognizing simple tactical opportunities.
Wow. So it's pretty comprehensive.
It is. It's really impressive how they managed to make such a complex game accessible to young children.
This book really is amazing. It's so much more than just a chess guide. It's like a parenting manual, a creativity booster, and a strategy boot camp all rolled into one.
You know, right? And, even if your kid never becomes a chess grandmaster, the skills they learn from playing chess, like problem solving and critical thinking, those are skills they can use in all aspects of their life.
Absolutely. So for anyone out there who thought chess was too complicated for a 4-year-old, this book proves that it's definitely possible. And it might just be the most fun and rewarding challenge you and your child ever take on together.